Hi everybody, and welcome back to Cromwell Castle. I'm Charles Cromwell, and today we'll be jumping right back into Pokemon Mythology. Now in this video, it's going to be a little bit different. This one is going to be a lot more of my own theories, because we don't have a whole lot of information on how things connect with these legendary Pokemon. And the legendary Pokemon in question are of course the ones right behind me. We have Cosmog, Cosmoem, Lunala, Solgaleo, Kyogre, Rayquaza, and Groudon. Now a lot of you might be asking how exactly that is the next logical step and how any of those connect. Well, in our last video we discussed the creation of the universe in and of itself, with Arceus, Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina. Well, what's a universe without matter? That's where Cosmog comes in. Cosmog, in theory, is matter itself. Now, we don't know if Arceus actually created Cosmog. It would be logical that he did. Or if Cosmog spontaneously occurred due to collections of unknown, like we discussed in the last video. Either way, Cosmog seems to be the representation of matter. So this is the first physical thing that is not Arceus or his base creations in the universe. Cosmog evolves into Cosmoem, which again is kind of matter. Cosmoem is a singularity, so it's more a representation of Giratina in this universe given its immense gravitational pull. It's essentially a black hole. But all galaxies in our real world circle around black holes. So it kind of holds everything together. And what's interesting about these particular legendary Pokemon is their evolutionary line. We have matter itself, a black hole, and then a star and a moon. Which is interesting from a scientific standpoint, given that moons typically come from the planets they orbit, or from dust that got collected by the planet that they orbit, and not from a singularity. Most things don't escape singularities. Things can, of course, that's been recorded, but generally not a moon. Generally, it would have to be something that moves at an extraordinary speed, and a moon just isn't going to do that. A star might be born from a black hole, however. So, Solgaleo kind of makes sense. And once you have a star, you can create a planetary system. So you can start getting planets that orbit the star, and potentially life on one or more of those planets. And then we have the legendary trio from Hoenn: Kyogre, Rayquaza, and Groudon. They're representations of the planet Earth that exist within the Pokemon universe. Groudon is the continent Pokemon, so he represents all of the land masses on the planet. Rayquaza is the sky-high Pokemon. He is a representation of the atmosphere itself, the shell around the planet that allows for life to happen. And then we have Kyogre, the sea basin Pokemon, the representation of all of the water on the planet. All three of these things are absolutely necessary for life, which is why we have to talk about them coming into existence before we talk about what some people might think of as the first Pokemon being Mew, or any of the fossil Pokemon being the first Pokemon. We'll get to that later. That's an interesting topic, which came first, Mew or the fossils. So we have the sun and moon because we have matter. We have a continent Pokemon. We have the sky-high atmosphere Pokemon, the sea basin Pokemon. We have all of these things ready for life, but the Earth is still very young. It's still very volatile. At this point in time, we have Kyogre and Groudon in their primal forms, constantly waging war against each other. Kyogre wanting nothing but water on the planet, flooding it constantly. Groudon wanting nothing but land, trying to dry up all of the water and raise continents out of the sea just to spite Kyogre. And then you have Rayquaza, who's just minding his own business up in the sky, eating minerals that just float around from, I'm sure, the turbulence down below. Until he decides that he's had enough. And comes down and stops them. Which is interesting, that one Pokemon is strong enough to stop these two titans of land and sea. And not only that, that it's a sky Pokemon, an atmosphere Pokemon. And that in and of itself makes sense in science in our world too. The atmosphere around the planet is what eventually settled all of the turbulence of primitive Earth in our world, so that things could happen in sequence and evolution could start taking place. So it does have some basis in reality. Now, there are stories within the games and within the show about humans being around and calling Rayquaza down and giving him more power in order to do this, but that came a long time later. The first time that Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon came into being and fought each other couldn't possibly have been after humans already came about. They are very old. They are the titans of land and sea. They had to be around when Earth originally formed. So this just keeps happening over and over, and we see that again in the games. The original Hoenn set of games, you had to calm down Kyogre and Groudon, and Rayquaza fought them, and yada yada yada. And then we had the Hoenn remakes, which again, you had to fight them, and it was supposed to take place later than the original games. So this happens in a cycle, over and over again, which again makes sense in science in our real world. We have something called tectonic plates on the Earth, in our world. And these plates move around and shift around and change the look of the Earth. They change the sea levels. They change where the seas are, where the land is. Some land ends up underwater. Some land ends up shot up sky high. And that makes sense. It all happens in a cycle. So these games do a really good job at depicting that in a way that people can understand. So, then how do Solgaleo and Lunala really play into this, given that they are technically Ultra Beasts? They're technically from another dimension, not even from the Pokemon World's version of Earth. Well, given what we know about the multiverse theory within Pokemon, there are multiples of all of the legendaries. That was even said in Solgaleo and Lunala's title, Sun and Moon, where you ended up going through ultra wormholes and collecting legendaries from different universes to add to your teams. And that's how they ended up available in those games. And we also had a similar situation with Hoopa creating dimensional vortices into other realities in order to collect legendaries from different regions and things like that. So there are multiples of these, which means that they very well could exist within the original Pokemon universe and not just in Ultra Space. And that's really the only way that anything could happen in this universe, is if a version of Cosmog, Cosmoem, Solgaleo, and Lunala existed within the base universe. Because you can't do anything without matter. If you don't have matter, you just have this vast, empty, dark cosmos that nothing really ever happens in. Which is why, personally, I do think that Arceus himself created them, or at the very least, Dialga and Palkia came together to create them, which is a logical leap that time and space came together to make matter. And perhaps that is what Giratina kept destroying with his immense gravity. Perhaps Giratina is the reason that Cosmog evolves into Cosmoem, which in its purest form is a singularity. It's called the Protostar Pokemon. So it is a dense cluster of material that eventually combusts and becomes a star. So maybe Giratina didn't do so bad after all. Maybe he's the only reason that matter was made available in the universe. Maybe it was him that condensed these things down. Maybe it was him that is the reason that we have stars in the universe. And without a star, you can't really have a planet with life on it. Just something to think about. But in the meantime, if you like this video, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Even if you didn't like the video, just leave a like anyway. It ain't going to hurt you. And remember to ring that bell so that you get notified when I put up new videos, especially since my schedule is a little weird, so I don't have a set day when I will be uploading. This one I'm filming pretty much right after I got up, and I'm hoping to have it up by the end of the day, and I meant to film it a few days ago. So remember to hit that bell so that you can be notified when one goes up. And eventually I will have a decent schedule that you can actually follow. Thank you for watching, and next week we'll get into a little bit more Pokemon.